Welcome back to another video of Getting Up Raw, where if you're new to this channel, it is a segment that I do on a weekly basis where we try to engage in civil discourse and open up a conversation about cultural, political, social, global topics, anything that gets the pot stirring. You know I love that shit. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel for more of this type of content. And today, we are getting up raw with expired racial stereotypes in brands, in culture, in companies. I'm talking Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben's, Lady Antebellum, and Splash Mountain. All right, these are the four themes we're gonna explore today, and we got to ask ourselves the question: why is change necessary? Right? Should we, as a country or as society, should we sacrifice sentimentality in deference to social progress, right? Or consciousness? Because a lot of people, they have sentimental attachment to these things, to symbols and logos and characters. It's just something that, people, they feel nostalgic with when it comes to something that throws them back to their childhood, Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben's, whatever. So I got my outline ready to go. Let's go ahead and talk about origins, all right? I'm just going to briefly go over the origins of Aunt Jemima, just so that you can get a better understanding in case you haven't already heard it or done the research yourself. But Aunt Jemima has her origins. They stem back to 1889, right? When the two founding members of Quaker Oats, right? They went, what was their name? Charles Underwood and Chris Rutt, right? They decided to go out, a crazy night out in the town. They went to a vaudeville show. So in the vaudeville show, there was minstrel performances. And in minstrel performances, as you may or may not know, there was blackface. Lots and lots of blackface. And in one of the performances, one of the blackface performers sang a song titled Old Aunt Jemima. Bada bing, bada boom. They got their idea for pancake mix, and that was the birth of Aunt Jemima. So Aunt Jemima's name, her etymology, dates back to 1889 when the two founding members saw the song being performed in blackface at a minstrel show. So Aunt Jemima herself adopted the look, or I shouldn't say she did. The company adopted the look for Aunt Jemima in the form of Mammy. So Mammy is a slave caricature that was meant to soften the harsh realities of slavery in the South. So Mammy was depicted as this rather large black woman who was the caretaker in a white family house, and she was very happy to be there, very happy to be of service to the white family and take care of their kids and clean and cook. This was the image that they portrayed at the time to sort of soften the blow in terms of what slavery actually was. They would say like, "Hey, look at Mammy. She's so happy to be serving us whites. Her food is so delicious. Everyone loves Mammy." Meanwhile, Mammy is literally a slave and just literally a half a step above the slaves that were picking cotton in the fields. So it was still slavery. It's still forced labor, and she was still held there against her will. And also, Mammy didn't know better, I guess, but they never portrayed that in terms of the character, right? Or the caricature, the archetype of Mammy. So, Mammy was always desexualized, right? The archetype of Mammy was always desexualized, obsequious, right? She was very subservient to the house that she worked in, and she was always happy to do so. So that's the image that Aunt Jemima took on to represent the syrup, or at the time, the syrup mix. And till this day, Aunt Jemima is still the main mascot or spokesperson for the company, but her image has evolved. So let's give them that. Let's give Quaker Oats, or PepsiCo, because PepsiCo bought Quaker Oats back in 2001. Let's give them that. They did restructure her image in a way that they felt was appropriate to represent black people. And as we know, black culture in the United States is obviously multidimensional. So in the year 2020, having old, expired racial stereotypes, it serves no place in our society, right? Let alone on the shelves of our supermarket. So Mammy became skinnier. They gave Aunt Jemima makeup. They made her younger. So this was their way of kind of saying, listen, we don't want to abandon our brand completely, because a brand obviously is a very important image. It's the front facial communication when it comes to you and your clientele or your customer base. They don't want to abandon Aunt Jemima entirely, but they fixed her up a bit and made it a little more appropriate, quote unquote. But it's still not the case today. You know, the name Aunt Jemima, now that we know the origin, has a dark place, right? It was taken from a minstrel show on a minstrel through a minstrel performance, and it's just basically an evolved form or concept of Mammy. Aunt Jemima is still Mammy. She may not look like she did back in 1889 or 1890, but it still has those ties, and it still alludes to a more ignorant time in our country. So that's the main hullabaloo with the whole situation with Aunt Jemima. So now again, this begs the question, should we sacrifice sentimentality, in deference to progress, social progress? And listen, we definitely should, because as a country and as proud Americans, we should own up to our history, right? And now this is just my humble opinion. We need to own up to our history and understand where we came from and do better. Because when we do better, we set an example for those who come after us, right? You don't want your kids walking through the supermarket and seeing these racial stereotypes that exist of black people that are so obsolete and just so culturally insensitive, right? They have dark histories and dark pasts. So why on earth would we continue to flaunt them and have them be the face of our companies? As a matter of fact, Aunt Jemima was the sort of the first domino to incite other companies to do the same. Uncle Ben's wants to rebrand their identity as well. Uncle Ben started off as a servant, right? His image was a servant for a white family as well. It wasn't only up until recently, I think in 2006 or 2007, where they updated Uncle Ben's image and gave him the sort of CEO position of the Uncle Ben company. And I think that you can actually go online, you can explore his office as CEO, and there's something like that, some sort of interactive experience between the visitor and Uncle Ben's. But look, Uncle Ben still has that tie to the past, even in the name. They didn't change the name, so it does still have that racial insensitivity, which needs to be addressed. And I actually am very happy that they are addressing it and taking the time to restructure their company and their identity. Because listen, let's be 100% honest. It's not an easy thing for corporations and businesses to do that. When everyone knows that your brand is the most integral and important part of your whole economy. So if you have to go and start from square one, yeah, that's hard, but it is the right thing to do. It is the right thing to do. And there's ways of doing it so that the transition is smooth and seamless, which they have the money to do so. They have the teams and the people power. So listen, all power to them. Let's make this transition nice and seamless, and let's get these expired stereotypes out of the way. This is my humble opinion. I'm curious to know what you guys think about that. Having said that, though, this also incited even country artists to come out and say, listen, we have to restructure our name as well. Oh, not restructure. We have to just rename our image. They're not restructuring their music, but it's just their name, right? Lady A, formerly known as Lady Antebellum, is now realizing the reality of what their name actually meant. So for those of you, again, that don't know, Antebellum is in allusion to the antebellum era of the South, which is also known as the plantation era of the South, which was obviously the period in time where the South was thriving economically speaking. They had a lot of power in government, in the federal government, because of the overall potency of their economy, which was driven through slavery. Yes. So the plantation antebellum era is the slave era of the South. So Lady A took that understanding, took that knowledge, learned from it, and changed their name. All right? And that's an extremely difficult thing to do, and I feel it's a very extremely difficult thing to do in country music, because if there's anything that's consistent with country music and the South in general, it's the idea of holding on to culture and history, which, yes, it's very important. I think these are things that should live on forever. But we have to call ourselves out on our own bullshit. All right? So, and this goes for statues. And, I made a video about statues and monuments, the difference between remembering and commemorating. We'll remember the antebellum era of the South. Trust me, that shit is not going away. That is going to be in textbooks and museums for years and years and years and years to come. Okay? The same way people talk about the pyramids and the monuments in Egypt and the sphinxes, right? I mean, there's debate on who built those, but I guess the point I'm trying to say is history is not going to go away. It's not erasing itself. We will always remember it. We need not commemorate things that need not be commemorated. I always say that. And look, Lady Antebellum saw that. They took it and they said, we're changing it, which is awesome. I'm just looking at my outline, make sure that I hit every single point possible, and not every single point possible, but every single point that I want to hit, and I did, because I'm awesome that way. So let's talk about Splash Mountain, which has a lot more gray areas in terms of debate and argument. Disney is rebranding their Splash Mountain ride in Disneyland and Disney World, and they're converting it to The Princess and the Frog, which is dope. If you have not seen the Princess and the Frog movie, I highly recommend that you don't close this video, but open another tab, right? Get your Disney Plus going and watch that movie, because in my opinion, it is the most underrated Disney movie of all time. It's fun. It's got its ups and downs, its twists and turns. And listen, the story is a lot better than what Splash Mountain is originally based off of. So Splash Mountain is based off a Disney movie from the 40s titled Song of the South. The movie was so racist that Disney never actually released it on VHS or DVD at any point in history. So, and Song of the South is actually based on a set of books written by Joel Chandler Harris, who I did learn briefly in high school. When we touched upon that whole era, like To Kill a Mockingbird. He never got the notoriety that Harper Lee got, but it was enough to catch the attention of Walt Disney and make a movie out of it. So in the movie, or in the stories, there's the narrator, who is Uncle Remus, and Uncle Remus basically tells stories of the South, folkloric stories of plantation life and of Reconstruction and post-Reconstruction era South. The problem, where's the issue, right? The issue that a lot of people see in this scenario, or in A Song of the South and the Uncle Remus stories in general, is the appropriation of Black culture and Black stories. So now, appropriation is a word that's also very controversial in itself. What makes something appropriated versus what makes it being appreciated. So, and in the instance of Harris's stories, they're told in a very through a rose-tinted lens, right? It's the same thing with the Mammy caricature and archetype of Mammy that was meant to soften the blow or soften the image of the actual reality of what slavery was. Harris was not convicted. He was called out for doing the same thing, essentially. So they said, listen, the stories you're telling and the way you're telling them is not true to reality, right? And this brings up another argument a friend of mine brought up to me, or mentioned to me, the whole Quentin Tarantino thing. Quentin Tarantino made a movie called Django Unchained, right? And why isn't that appropriating? And listen, some people do think it's appropriating. Some of my black friends think it's appropriating. But the main difference, in my opinion, is Quentin Tarantino doesn't tell that story through a rose-tinted lens, right? No, he shows the horrors and true reality of the South, excuse me, of the time. That's what this Raw segment is, you know, unedited, unfiltered, no, not color corrected. You literally, if I die on camera, that's what you get. So, yeah, Tarantino was able to capture the essence of the South and kind of put this side-by-side image, kind of dichotomously, of a beautiful landscape, the beauties of the South and the charming, polite people, and juxtapose it to the horrors that existed during that time. Like, that camera did not pan away at scenes where you thought it was going to pan away. Right? There were scenes that were very difficult to watch in that movie. And I think he captures the true reality of what the South was. And that's something that Mr. Harris did not accomplish through his stories. And it came across that way in the movie Song of the South as well. So that's why it's always been controversial. And that's what Splash Mountain is based off of. To be honest, this is a good rebrand, okay? Because like I said, Princess and the Frog, fantastic movie. Also visually stunning. So the fact that this is going to adopt that image as well is, wow, it's going to look absolutely ridiculous. Ridiculous in a good way, I mean. So I'm going to go ahead and just toss this over to you guys. Now that you know essentially where I stand on it, I'm curious to see where you guys stand on it. And listen, if you're arguing on the stance of sentimentality, you better have substance to your argument, because, you know, now that we're all on the same page of where things came from and how we progress as people on a conscious level, and on a social level, you got to really bring the big guns, so to speak, because to me, it's very difficult to sort of defend that thought otherwise. So yeah, I'm curious to know what you guys think. And then, of course, there's the line. You're always going to have the people that argue, where do we draw the line? Are we going to change everything? Bring that up too. Let's talk about it. What's the line that you mentioned, you know? I actually had a friend mention the whole Lucky the Leprechaun thing. You know, if we're changing Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben, why don't we change Lucky the Leprechaun? You know, you don't see a lot of Irish people being offended by that. Which, to be fair, you don't. I do have some Irish friends that just think it's a little insensitive. They're not offended by it, but they're like, you know, it's a stupid stereotype. I don't know anyone that actually talks like that, but I'm not offended by it. So, you know what? Fair argument. But Lucky the Leprechaun is based on a mythical, folkloric Irish creature, whereas Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben are based off of slaves, and fake caricature portrayal of slaves, right? And even the name comes from minstrel shows. So there's a huge difference, in my opinion, but I'm always curious to hear what you guys think. So go ahead in the comments. Let's start the conversation, open it up. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel for more of these types of videos. I'm putting out content, you know, every week. Tomorrow I'm going to have another Getting Up Raw segment, and on Friday I'll release a video of something. I don't know yet, but, you know, I got the stuff cooking in my brain. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out, and nothing but love, people. Spread the love, and don't yell at me in the comments, all right? We're talking. That's all it is. It's a conversation. Peace.